Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Christian Therapist Podcast. We are back again. Lindsay Castleman here with my friend Aron Strong. Welcome, welcome, Aron.
What's up, Lindsay? So glad to be back.
I
Always fun to
know.
do these.
I know. It's so good to be back. I do feel like something happened to my voice. So I am like,
I know. It's like you
well,
went to a concert and you were like
I
fangirling
know.
and just screaming the whole time or something.
I know. I know. I think it's like watching an extra kid. It might be why I'm losing my voice. I was like, man, I've not been yelling, but I have been talking a lot. Anyways, yes. So, Aaron, we are really kind of moving back into this place of looking at parenting. It just kind of happened where these topics of, hey, let's really find out what's happening with, the super strict parent, the super permissive parent. And again, we're calling all of these super because
Super.
they're pretty far on both ends of the spectrum. But in talking about the super strict parent, the super permissive parent, we also kind of out of that, there were two other categories really that you heard. You were like, ooh, that sounds like the super disengaged parent,
Yeah.
right? And then the other end of the pendulum there would be the super enmeshed parent as
Hmm.
well. And so today we're going to spend our time talking more about the super disengaged parent, which it's funny, all of these things that we talk about come out of like real life examples
Right.
of people we've worked with or just even people we interface with all the time. And what I was telling you is I had just like observed, I can't even say that word right now. I have watched some parents. I have looked around and taken in um, just some different kind of parenting that I was talking to you about, where on the outside, it just really can look like these parents just don't really like want to they don't want to engage with their kiddo, whether it's they're the ones that might not ever get into the pool with them,
Right.
or they're always off reading, or they're always off doing their own thing. And it's not that the kid doesn't have what they need, when it comes to food, shelter, water, like the basics. The kids can have what they need, but when you watch the dynamic, you just don't see a lot of that emotional connection and emotional interfacing that happens here.
Right. Because that's where we talked about the first two were like boundary setting, right? Permissive, super strict. Here we're talking about cohesion. We're talking about level of engagement and relationship. And the super disengaged parent has that posture that it doesn't seem to catch or understand or have tools for a deeper emotional connection. So they tend to operate very independently.
Yes.
It reminds me of a couple I was working with once, and the husband really believed his only obligation to his children was to provide food and shelter. Like
Right. They're
this is
like,
all
they've got these basics covered.
correct.
What
Like
more could they need? And I'm doing great here.
that's right. I've got my cat will not leave me alone. Go
I
away.
know. It's so funny because
Um,
it's like you can look like the villain with like the cat
right.
right
And
there.
he just like needs to be in my lap, and I'm like, go away. Um, so. Um, yeah, so there's this sense of they're not even fully aware of oftentimes of what that looks like. And that is often comes out of like a family of origin where that wasn't modeled, right? So what does like high emotional connection look like in parenting? Well, when you've never seen it, then you don't know that's a thing. A lot of
For
people,
sure.
sometimes you know it because you never got it. Other times people don't know it's a thing because that never happened. You're like, well, that's just not a thing. Like what would it even be? Like what would you
Right.
do? Right?
Well, and
So
there's even a place of like, man, I might have not have even gotten the basics. So the fact that I'm giving my kid the basics,
yeah,
like
you
that's doing great.
I'm killing it. Like I'm
Right.
so much better than where I am. Like they have so much more resources, so much more care, right? I'm just doing all these great things compared to my own, not realizing they don't even see the gaps, right?
Correct. Correct. And that's even the question that I would get a lot, whether it's, I've been around kind of parenting like this in a lot of different facets of my life. But the key question that I keep getting from the kiddos is, wait, where did my parents go? Where are they? Why aren't they here? Looking around, seeing every other, every other kiddo's parent is like engaging with them. And it's not to say that the parent isn't sitting off at a far distance, right? It's not saying they're just not showing up at all. But the word that we kind of put to it was there's just this blindness
Hmm.
to see that they're missing this emotional engagement on
Right,
such a big level that
right.
even a kiddo who doesn't even have words for this can already start to realize something's not okay.
Sure. And there's this, there's a spectrum of disengagement too, where they're not even present, they're
Hmm.
never around. And on the other end of that spectrum is they show up to every game on their work computer, and I mean they're there, but they're not there. So
Correct.
that
Or on their
lack of
phone. Yeah.
right, or they're just always talking to somebody else they're not really watching. They're present, but they're not there.
Hmm.
And that sense of disengagement is in the like we said, cohesion is this quality of connection that children are inherently looking for. And in this perspective, there's like when you have no model, then you don't even know that you're supposed to provide it. There's no neurons in your brain that are firing to say, hey, we should probably do this thing. They're
Right.
just like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Um, and but then, on the other hand, right, if you kind of take that presentation where they are kind of overly caught up in their own ideas or their own perspective or their own
Mhm.
agenda, then that can also look super selfish
Right.
because all they want to do is just prioritize their own stuff. Like kids are
Mhm.
like, let's go do this. You're like, no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
And their kids are like, no, okay,
Right. And or you go do that by yourself.
right. I
Hmm.
struggle with that. So there's part of this I struggle with in my parenting because my dad was more disengaged than engaged. So I didn't get a lot of this deep interaction. And my son wants to interact by like mock fighting and wrestling or all the time. And I just don't always want to do that every time. And so that sense of how much do I push into an area I don't want to for the sake of his connection, and
Right.
how much do I'm like help him know a boundary? Like I don't want to.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
I don't always want to be choked every time.
Correct. Correct.
So there's that, but that lack of model, there's not just my preference for the engagement. I think that there's an internal resistance towards something that wasn't really modeled, and so I can struggle in that area. I think that that's just uh, maybe I'm excusing myself. It's just a valid thing that happens. You just don't. There's just something inside of you that's like, no, we don't need to do that. That's not something that we do.
For sure. Well, and to a degree, Aaron, you tell me if this fits, but there can also be, especially for those that didn't have that modeled, there can be something inside that almost like a younger Aaron in there that's saying, no, we had to learn not to need this much.
Right.
Why can't you learn not to need this much? Or we
Sure.
had to learn that when you ask, it doesn't get answered. That should also apply to you as well. Because
Right.
that's where I have had parents, even that I've worked with, and even, my husband did not have the best father either, of just watching the way that we engaged with my son, the way that he was allowed to have needs in such a big way was really hard for my husband to be able to witness because he had to learn to put a lot of those aside as
Yeah.
well.
Like giving things that you've never received is very difficult.
Correct.
There's just a
Correct.
resistance in there. And so there's just an aspect of the super disengaged parent. Now, people may find the reason we're using super is, I can find myself on the spectrum of disengagement rather
Sure.
than enmeshment, but I'm not super disengaged. I don't think anybody would, like my
Sure.
family would say that.
No.
So I don't want people to feel guilty, like, oh my gosh, like we're all screwing our kids up our own unique ways. But on this end, the super disengaged parent takes that all the way to the end, right? So
Mhm.
there's just this huge blindness, and they're gonna go take their kids to things they want to do, not the things their kids want to do.
Correct. Correct.
Um,
Yeah. And even, I was talking to you about it in a way of, whenever there's anybody there that could watch their kid, that could take care of their kid, that could be responsible for their kid so they could go off and go do their own thing,
yeah,
they take it so quickly. And again, we
yeah,
all need breaks. We all need, kids don't need to be with us all the time, but there's just this place of disengaging, but the disengagement can completely miss a tune to the kiddo. And
yeah,
so that again, when the kiddo is constantly left looking around, going, where is my parent? Why is my parent not with me? And again, it's a witness that is more of an emotional witness
right,
as well. And even I think you were telling me about an article you read too,
yeah.
right? In that way. I don't know if now's the time to throw
Well,
it
I
out
should
there.
I should have looked up the name of the book, or I should have saved the article. But basically, it was a guy that's coming out with a book talking about a trend where young adults in their 20s are cutting off their parents.
Right.
And the reason was because of this lack of emotional connection, where their parents were like, "No, I was physically at all the things," and the
Hmm.
kids are like, "You didn't engage with me, like you weren't there with me."
Right.
And that's leading to these huge disconnects and family arguments over who did what when and what
Hmm.
that experience was. And so that blindness we were talking about with the super disengaged parent is they don't see the complaint. They don't understand what's being asked for. They
Right.
don't see themselves as selfish because in their mind, dumping your kids off with your grandparents is great for everyone,
Hmm.
right? It's a win-win everywhere. Like
Hmm.
the kids get to be with the grandparents, grandparents get to be with the kids, and we get to go do whatever we want. Like, where's the loss? And they just don't see the that ongoing regular connection. Where
Right.
kids put themselves to bed at 6, and you're like, all right, good night, and off they
Hmm.
go. Like, and that's just the normal thing.
Right.
So we talked about like not having a model as part of that. Also, if we just have desires and agendas that we just kind of prioritize of our own perspective and aren't
Hmm.
aware of the need for a deeper quality of connection. One of the other
Right.
things that we talked about in terms of that can also show up in terms of a disengaged parent has to do with like an external role or job, right? So when they have a position or a role that is very demanding, I think about school administrators,
Hmm.
pastors, anyone that works in politics or different parts of government. There's a lot of different corporations where they just have to travel a lot, or
Hmm.
there's high level leadership where their identity and their role is really wrapped up in this external thing of the mission they're trying to accomplish, and
Hmm.
that just becomes the priority of everything they do.
Right.
Then everything else is a secondary priority or just one more demand that they're struggling to fulfill, and so they just
Hmm.
tend to not be as present in those areas.
For sure. And it's a very difficult balance because some of those jobs and positions are jobs and positions that they can justify by like, I'm helping a lot of people. I am I'm running corporations, I'm running churches, I'm running missions. I mean, just it can all be really, really good things that they could be doing.
Right?
But it is interesting because I always do get curious about, man, if you can run these businesses, these teams, all these things, like how does your partnership, your leadership look like at home?
Well, it's hard because the story they carry is that these people need me. I'm needed out here.
Hmm.
And in their mind, like the things that you already have, like they're looking at the gaps, right?
Mhm.
I got to show up or this gap will show up. But at home, everything's already stable. I got a spouse who's covering the goals or covering the bases, and the kids are there, and we have these moments of interaction. And so that blindness isn't looked at how needed they are at home because home appears stable.
Mhm.
Often, the super disengaged parent has some level of counterbalance of an engaged parent, not always.
Mhm.
But when there's a counterbalance, then that belief of like, well, someone's covering that gap, but no one can cover my gap out in the role I'm in.
Right.
And so that leads them to prioritize the hottest fire, which is almost never at home unless there's a crisis. And then even then, sometimes that's not quite enough. And when you
Mhm.
got two of them at the same time, then you get kids with a lot of emotional neglect,
Right.
right? A felt sense of abandonment. Even if there's no physical abandonment, it can be a felt sense of abandonment, and all those kinds of things play in.
Right. Well, and isn't that the irony too? Is the belief inside says everything's okay there. I'm really needed over here.
Right.
But yet the irony is they could find someone else to replace. They could like definitely any kind of position is one that we're all replaceable in, but not as mother or father to your child,
Hmm.
right? Like that is the one that they're not looking to have anybody else replace that role.
Right.
That is one of the most important, and especially when you start to look at lifespan and life stages of kiddos, when they start to realize more of who they are, they start to look to dad, they start to look to mom. What does being a man really look like? What does a woman really mean?
Hmm.
That's also they'll start to look at mom and dad for that too, because that's their point of reference, right?
Yep.
So it's just such irony there, that belief, but isn't that what a lot of beliefs that we create, whether it's in trauma, whether it's just in this wiring together, that's not trauma, but just over time, these things that are handed down to us, these
Right.
beliefs that are handed down to us, that these beliefs whisper to us that aren't actually true, but it helps reinforce behavior. It helps reinforce choices.
Yep. You do something for 18 to 20 years, right?
Right.
While your
Right.
brain's forming and you're under your parents' protection and coverage.
Hmm.
And then you need stories to make sense of that.
Right.
And then you carry them because that's not odd, that's normal.
Correct.
It's just what
Correct.
is. It's like there's
Yes.
not a memory of an exception,
Yes.
right? There
Yes.
there's no it's just what how things are.
Right.
And so that sense of no one met my needs and you need to learn how to accommodate or how to adapt to not having your needs met, that's very important. That's a survival skill. When it was
Mhm.
for the parent, right? The kid
Correct.
doesn't need to learn that lesson unless they have a parent that can't engage, but that can be a cycle.
Right.
And not all kids interpret things the same way, but and that goes back to this like kind of final category we talked about in terms of this sense of feeling avoidance,
Hmm.
not just like proximity avoidance can be a thing, but feeling avoidance where I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to feel lost. I don't want to feel like I don't know what to do. I don't want to have a bunch of conflict or hold discipline. I don't want to have to do all of these things because I can't tolerate that feeling in myself. So then when invitations for both either connection engagement occur or some kind of discipline engagement, that sense of resistance shows up in them both either side or both sides, and they don't want to experience that in themselves, so they don't do it with their kids
Right.
because they'd have to feel it and they don't
Right.
want to,
No,
and so they
no.
just move away.
Well, and you can kind of hear how with all of these places of avoidance, of feeling like I'm needed here, there, everywhere, that there is such an accommodation that everyone else has to do, right, around either that avoidance or that belief inside of them that like people are going to have to rearrange and adapt and take on these same ways of being inside of them in order to keep that parent okay,
Right.
which is tough because really and truly with parenting, what we want parenting to do is we want to start to be open to feedback with parenting. We want to start to really and truly ask God to remove any kind of blindness that we have. I mean, that's a little bit of his hallmark is he can help the blind to see
Right.
and to be able to go, man, guaranteed being a parent is going to make me face these beliefs in myself, this avoidance that I've had, maybe this selfishness that I carry. Like parenting, if I allow it, will start to refine me so I don't continue to carry these patterns from whatever I've been through
Right.
into my kiddo,
Yep.
right? I want to be the stopgap,
Yep.
or what is it? The buck stops here kind of
Yeah.
deal, right?
Yeah. I think because I love that sense of who God is, right? Because there's not a sense of like you have to fix yourself up for him to accept you,
Correct.
right? He's not, you don't have to fix yourself first to become acceptable to him. He takes you where he finds you, but he doesn't want to leave you where he found you.
Hmm.
Right. And so this process of transformation is difficult because then he does open our eyes. And when you see, then you got to see all the stuff you've been missing. And there's an accountability that rises with that. And there's a discipline to move into all the parts that have feel uncomfortable, engaging, meeting needs that weren't met in me. If we talk about prioritizing leadership at home and not just out of the home and the fear of what's going to impact or what I'll lose because of that, or the sense of engaging all of the emotions I hate for the sake of someone else. But I think that that's part of what the gospel is all about, of how God is doesn't spare himself from the difficult feelings, the suffering, the engagement of all the negative things out of love for someone. He doesn't spare himself that. And he calls us to follow his model in that, which is such a high level of self-leadership and self-engagement. It can be very overwhelming, but that's why we're not called to do it alone. A super
Right.
engaged parent can hear a message like that and then feel super convicted to fix all of that by themselves.
Hmm. Hmm.
Which is still in the same pattern, right? Where they're just kind of in there alone and learning how to move into community, how to have someone meet you there as you go to meet your kids there. Like that cycle is really part of that transformation process where you can awaken the idea that your needs can be met within a community, and you can meet others' needs. That sense of just because we hadn't seen it doesn't mean we can't learn it. Um,
Right.
and there's a process of transformation that we're all engaged in that's, even growing muscles is painful, but they get
Hmm.
stronger. And
Hmm.
so moving towards resistance and not just always away from resistance nets good feelings, right? Creates more strength, more connection, more capacity, all those things.
Correct. Correct. And, for clinicians, like as we're talking to therapists, Christian therapists, that it can be tough, and it's okay to just name it can be tough to work with people who have a blindness, which is all of us, but it's even more difficult when people come in and there's a blindness, but it's not a blindness that they want you to look at. They want you to help everybody else adjust to them.
Hmm.
And there is a place of really first helping a client get to this place of wondering what is it that they want, right? We're going back to just like Jesus asking the man at the pool of Bethesda, right? We're going back to what is it that you want?
Yep.
Are we wanting a better relationship? But then from that, we're starting to listen to their way of creating a better relationship is usually getting other people to move.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so those are also places that we have to slow down and help wonder about that with them, but also help point out that that's not within their realm to control,
Right.
or should it be?
Right.
Right. And so then from those places, if there is a willingness, if there is an openness to start to look inward, to start to wonder how can we adjust, a lot of times we then have to listen for those beliefs. Like we
Hmm.
have to listen for those messages that are sideways that say, no, like kids need to be independent.
Yeah.
They don't need me. I'm giving them everything. And
Right.
start to be curious as to where this came from in their story.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so important. I mean, when I look at therapy, there's the therapist part of what we do, but there's a clinician part of what we do where we're
Yes.
able to assess everything as data. And there's a reason why this belief there, there's a reason why this functions the way it does. And when we can kind of be curious and lean towards those blocks, we begin to understand kind of the internal organization or the drivers that kind of show up in these ways so that we kind of know how to work and adjust and help them adapt right in those places. And it's hard though, as therapists, we're humans too. And when someone shows up with a blindness that we despise or we
Sure.
hate, what
Sure.
kind of terrible parent are you? Or we share wounds with, we have parents like our client and have wounds from them because of those things. Generating that amount of compassion and curiosity can kind of create a lot of resistance in us, that makes it really hard. So that can be hard. But then the opposite is true. When we have the same blindness as our client, that's also hard.
Right.
And
Right.
so, when we recognize the resistance in us around those, like, and it can be, easy to hate the super disengaged parent, for all of their selfishness and self-prioritization and the negative impact they create. When we attune to them like they're a child, not to treat them like a child, but when we attune to the part of them that wasn't met, and then we see all the ways they've organized themselves to kind of show up in life, then we have a little bit more compassion to kind of draw close to the distressed. And that's exactly what Jesus does. Jesus was always accused of drawing close to the undesirables, right? To the cast-offs, the tax collectors and prostitutes, and everyone that everyone else would say, oh, they're just too broken to be near. That's who he drew close to. And that's kind of our call also, I think, as Christian therapists.
Yes. Yes. I would agree wholeheartedly. And there's a place too, I just think, amongst just everybody, whether it's therapists, whether it's non-therapists, but just everybody, especially as believers. Like there is a place that I do believe, and it's a struggle, but to really put on this place of humility, right? This place of going, I don't have the corner on any market here,
Right.
and I need to keep growing. Like I did not arrive as a final product. Like there is a continual growing, a continual working out that we've got to do all the time. And people that we interact with help us with that,
Hmm.
whether we want them to or not. Our kids help us with that. Reflecting back and really attuning to who we were as kids and what we did and didn't get helps us with that. Like
Right.
there's a lot of different ways to continually grow. And it's funny because you heard that article. There was an article that I heard about this week. I think it was yesterday. I was listening, and it was basically on one of these dating sites. I can't remember which one, whether it's like the eHarmony, da 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 da. I don't know. I don't even know if that's still around, but it's one of those dating sites. It was like the number one thing that people wanted in a partner was someone that didn't want to change them, right? Someone that accepted me just as I am, which I'm like, I mean, in order for anybody to accept anybody just as they are, they would have to be superhuman and probably pretty disengaged themselves. Because
Yeah.
the more that you start to care about somebody, the more you want to connect with them, the more that you actually want to have just such a close relationship. The way that God designed close relationships is we are going to continually, really and truly come up against blocks to
Hmm.
connection, blocks to our heart. We're going to start to see the ways that we survive relationships come out in a big way. Like there almost needs to be a shift that says the person that I'd want is someone that won't accept me just as I am,
Yeah.
but that says, no, 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 we're going to keep growing more into the likeness of Christ.
Yeah.
Like we don't when we get into a relationship now, we don't want to look the same now, or, we don't want to look the same in 5, 10, 15 years that we do now. Like we
Hmm.
want to grow together,
Yeah.
not just tolerate each other and tolerate these places in us that need growing. They need maturity. They need to the blind to be able to see. Like they
Mhm.
need wisdom and growth.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of that idea of I mean, I'm not who I was 20 years ago,
Correct.
right? And so even I'm not as I am, like never growth, never changed. I think that there's a sentiment in there that says, I don't want someone to reject who I am and make me into their own image so I'm better for them and not for myself.
Hmm.
I want someone to see me and help me become a better version of who I am, but
Right.
that takes a skill to look below. But that person who's more than happy to shape you into their desires and their perspective of what's right is what we're talking about on the next podcast.
It's true. Look at you
Super
setting that
enmeshed.
up. The enmeshed
That's
parent.
right. They're more than happy to tell you who you are and who you're supposed to be.
Correct. Correct. Because that is so easy to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, Aaron, that was a good segue. And we will go ahead and sign off for the super disengaged parent, and if you're okay with it, Aaron, just to kind of go over those four different points of the
Yeah.
disengaged, just so that we've got them succinct.
Right, because we always want to make sure that we look at people through a lens of love and a lens of compassion, not as an excuse of behavior, but to really
Right.
understand underlying drivers that we can bond with them and draw close to help motivate change, even as we tease out the super enmeshed parent. Like we'll do that for them too. I know we kind of
Mhm.
left it out there like in a really negative way, but four things, right? So super disengaged parents often had no family of origin that modeled healthy engagement. And so there's just a blindness of what that's supposed to be or even what it's supposed to look like. That's even a thing to do. So sometimes just having no models leaves that. They can also get very wrapped up in prioritizing their own agendas and desires if they didn't get a lot of their needs met when they were younger. Or sometimes just being kind of like, I don't know, pleasing yourself feels good. And that can capture your attention if you have resources to do so. Or even in the lack of resources, it almost even more increases your desire for those things as a sense of relief. And it can just draw you into kind of a more self-focused perspective. And you just don't see the needs around you. Identity and purpose, if you have a role outside of the family that is critically important, that where people you're needed, it helps you feel significant much more than at home, then that can be prioritized over the family, and you'll miss those things at home in order to pursue what's happening externally. And the last thing we talked about was just feeling avoidance areas where they may be depressed or they're overworked or they're fearful of conflict or they just don't like a distress. They don't know what to do with their body. They don't want to engage with others. Even feelings of closeness and intimacy can just feel very uncomfortable if that's never really felt safe. So even feelings of connection can be resisted as almost kind of dangerous for reasons, but also
Right.
it leaves kids with a parent that doesn't know how to engage. So there's a lot of different things that can happen inside of a super disengaged parent to lead to the presentation. And so our job as a believer and as a therapist is to go find out what happened and why is that there and how do we help this person become more of who God designed them to be.
Yes, yes. And hopefully having some of those frameworks can be helpful to even know what to start to listen for
Right.
in this place. That's what we're hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Aaron. And
So
next up, we are going to have, right, the super enmeshed parent
super
on
enmeshed.
Thursday. You
That's
got
right.
it. I'll see you later.
I'll see you there.